for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I don't have to read the executive session notice because we're not going into executive session tonight. We didn't have any community members registered to speak, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried with more generous donations this week. $2,500 from the Landing Resort, which includes $1,500 volleyball, $600 girls basketball, and $400 boys basketball. There's a high school. A $900 value donation from the Pioneer Athletic Booster Club to the boys high school basketball program. $1,000 from Barb Madden to the outdoor kitchen project, and $50,000 from anonymous organization to the proposed outdoor kitchen project. So thank you very much to all of those individuals and organizations. We'll begin with administrator reports. Mr. Schaefer is not here today, he's excused. Did you have anything you wanted to highlight for him? No, okay. Mrs. Margra.
Just my report, you all had received my report. I just wanted to let the board know that I'm anxiously awaiting to hear from the Rayburn Foundation to see if we can move and expand our summer school programming. And additionally, this weekend I'm being interviewed by the Pulse on Saturday. They're coming to see some of our community programs. So our woodworking class and our watercolor class will be highlighted soon. So just wanted to.
Mr. Giltz.
I have a presentation for you, but before I do that, I just wanted to talk about the spelling bee. That was something that we did this afternoon. Ran really well. It's the 7th year that we've been doing this. Let's see, the winner was Ellie Burris, and I just wanted to thank Mr. Showski and Mr. Skiba especially for all their work in putting that stuff together. Really, I show up and I announce the words. Everything else is taken care of. They did a really nice job with that. So. Right. So this evening I would like to present to you some information about our economically disadvantaged group. As you know, it's something that I have been working, trying to keep at the forefront more or less since my first year here. And one of the things I'd like to give credit to is Mrs. Margraff. When our report card scores came out in the fall of 2018, she and I sat down. One of the things that she had mentioned is, if you could find a way that you could move this group over and have them find some success, you're going to end up increasing all of your report card scores, and it's just going to be something that is really important, but is going to have lasting results. So I appreciate her mentioning that. It caused me to have that focus, and we knew that we had this hidden population. As you know, Sevastopol has officially about a 35% free and reduced. We believe that number to be a lot higher just because there's some people who don't fill out the paperwork. And that group can be hidden. If you are a minority by race, that's something that's very obvious, even if officially identified, and you can see that in the classroom. With our poverty students, you can't really see. A lot of them do what they can to blend in, and they do a really good job of blending in. So there's probably about 10% of our population, I would say, that's very, very noticeable, and there's another 30% that kind of go unseen. So one of the things we needed to do is we needed to find a way not just to meet their needs, providing food, clothing, understanding what other kind of needs that they have, finding a way to deal with this balancing act, find out more specifically what their needs are without being able to identify who those students are. We've got the list of free and reduced in the cafeteria, but we don't share that out with teachers. We don't say this is who those kids are. So how can we meet that group's needs and at the same time still be honoring the kids that we have in the classroom, the other kids. There's a researcher, his name is John Hattie, and one of the things that he does is he'll take a look at other research that's been done and try and figure out from all these different research reports what is the most important things that could be done in a classroom to have an effect on education. And the thing that he came across was teacher efficacy. And he actually talked about collective teacher efficacy. And what that is a collective belief that the teacher can make a difference. And I've been places where I've seen a teacher who believes that they can have that impact. One of the things that, until I actually read this, I wasn't able to put my finger on it. This exists here. You've got people who recognize other teachers. They know that those teachers are going to take care of the kids that they have because they're all of our kids, and we collectively need to work on raising the bar for them. So again, this is really, really important. The effect size, what they're talking about is the kind of growth that you can see. A 1 would be a 1 year of growth. A 1.5 is a year and a half's worth of growth within a year's time. So this is the most important thing that you can have in the school. I firmly believe that we do have that here. So how do we get that? It sounds easy, but we started off by having the right people on the bus. And a lot of credit goes to the people who were here before me, because I have to say, since I've been here, 1 core teacher is all that I've hired. So it was a nice job putting those people on. We also think it's important to make sure that we are focused on what the message or the topic is. As I said before, meeting the needs of the economically disadvantaged group is something that we continue to focus on. We're not worrying about 5 or 6 different things. So it allows everybody to really hone in on what they need to do. And then with that, making sure that we educate the staff on what important information there is, what best practices there are to meet those students' needs. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom 3 are things that we need to make sure that we take care of, just highlighting a few: food, clothing, personal security, and then you start getting to some of these higher levels where you're talking about adding friendships, making sure that there's a sense of connection. And it's important to do this for everybody, not just the obvious 10% that I was talking about. So you take care of those bottom 3 needs, and then that leads to being able to address things like esteem. And that's important. When you can get to that level and start focusing on that, that's where you're going to really start seeing gains. It's also important that we make sure that we develop trust, not just between the teacher and the student, but also our staff and parents. Something that my research had found is that people who are not in the economically disadvantaged category make an assumption that the teacher has the best interest of the kid in mind. And economically disadvantaged families need to explicitly be told that that is what the teacher's intentions are. So going into a parent-teacher conference, for example, that's something that would be mentioned. I'm really looking out for your child's best interest, and I have this information, as opposed to just jumping right into the information that you have. Some other things, children's vocabulary. Oftentimes these kids come in with 2/3 fewer words. And across the board, kids nowadays come in with fewer words because fewer kids go to church. A lot of words were shared a generation or 2 ago. That's where people would pick up some words. Adult conversations. Kids are playing on their computers, doing other things, so they're not listening to conversations. Parents aren't having conversations with or in front of them. And families are smaller than they used to be, so they're not even listening to their older siblings have those conversations. So finding ways to get more books in kids' hands, giving them a chance to do more reading. This kind of outlines even 20 minutes a day and how much of an impact that has exponentially over time. The other thing that reading does is it develops empathy, and that's something that is sorely lacking in the world today because kids just don't have a way of internalizing. what empathy means, how to deal with the world from an empathetic perspective. Other things that we can be doing and that we are doing is monitoring progress, intervene, provide feedback, do that on a cyclical basis. We have an outstanding title services department, and our teachers work very closely with that. Some effective strategies, small group instruction, cooperative learning are things that keep coming up. Other things, we realized during COVID, for example, that a lot of our students don't have access to the internet. So those are things that we keep in mind when we're developing lesson plans and sending homework home. Other simple things you wouldn't think of. Students aren't always taught at home in this population, the rules of school, and how to interact with one another. So you start, much like a good sports coach, you start with the basics to make sure that everybody is on the same plane, and then you work your way up from there. So regardless of whether a student is coming from a family that would have taught these lessons or not, we make sure that we start from the basic, that everybody's on the same. And this particular thing is called PBIS, and we came up with rules for all of our common spaces so that the kids could follow those. So we take care of the bottom three needs to work on students' esteem. One of the things that we also came up with was the community of caring program. When a student can impact the life of someone else, they see value in themselves. And so we gave each of the different classes a group to be responsible for, and then we as a school, as a whole, are responsible for the military. And we did a fundraiser for our veterans this past fall. Check. So there's lots of different activities that each of those classes do, and again, it gives the kids value. As I mentioned before, we've got tremendous consistency in our staff. Not only are they a strong staff, but they are around, as I said, one hire in 7 years. You can do a lot of things when you keep building on the success that you've had, and you don't have to start from scratch. Our ELL department makes great connections with the kids, so they feel a strong belonging here. And as I mentioned before, during COVID, we started seeing some things, recognizing that all of our population didn't have internet access. Common communication tools, something called Class Tag, now it's called School Status, translates for us, so that helps with those connections, and then sending home those Summer Bridge workbooks every year. We started doing some book studies. For Students Rich Teaching is the first one that we did, and that validated a lot of the things that I just shared with you. Talked about the importance of those things. Our teachers wanted something that could help them understand and appreciate the cultural connection. We have such a large Hispanic population, and so in the second year we did culturally responsive teaching, and I talked about how to pull in some of those cultural pieces. For example, it's not enough just to have something on Cinco de Mayo. You've got to find ways to understand the cultures that you're working with, find some authentic things that you can do with those students in your classroom so that you can honor where they're coming from. Our poverty simulation was huge. I know I've talked about that before. As I said, focusing on very few initiatives so that we can really hone in on them. We started using something called Character Strong, and that gives kids a sense of what it is to be a respectful citizen. And by doing that across the board, again, it gives them an even playing field. I have had anecdotal conversations with people, staff, talking about how our behaviors seem to have gone down the last couple of years since we started implementing this. And then we added new curriculum for ELA and for math. I talked before as well about the Harvard-Stanford research that was done. On your packets, this would be the little charts toward the bottom on that first page. And we were outstanding before COVID. We were about 2.5 years. 2.5 years. 2.5 years ahead of grade level as far as the instruction that we were able to provide, our achievement After COVID, we did take a bit of a dip, but we've been able to come back up to the point where we're about a quarter of a year off of where we were before. Now, you look at the state, and the state has been able to gain back what they lost, but they didn't have much to lose to begin with. So, the gains weren't as great as what ours were. And then the last column just talks about similar districts. And same there. They've been able to gain some back, but they didn't have as much to lose. So that's both in ELA and math. You probably also heard that the forward exam scores, the bar has been lowered. And part of the reason for that is rumored to be what I just showed, that because the state scores are not able to get back to where they were, districts that look similar to us, not in terms of achievement, but in terms of the student population, they're not making those gains. So if we lower the bar, then all of a sudden more people. So taking a look at the data, the state divides students into 4 categories. Prior to this year, it was advanced and proficient, and then basic and below basic. For all these numbers that I'm going to show you, the advanced and proficient categories were combined for comparison purposes. We figured any student who has gotten past proficient is at least where we want them to be. You can see the black line is where the state has been over the years. These are trend lines. This is our all group, so this would be all of our students in those grades tested. And this is our economically disadvantaged group. It's amazing because typically what you see is an economically disadvantaged group, if you're doing a good job, that might be above the state and kind of mirroring the all group. But for it to actually cross the line and go above the all group is not common. That's not something.
The all is us, right?
They're both us. The economically disadvantaged group is specifically those kids, the population in our district. They would be included as well as the all group, but when you look at the all group, you're hoping that you're able to start closing the gap a little bit. To actually have closed the gap is unheard of. On the flip side, I don't believe you have this chart, but just to show you, we're also doing it in the opposite direction. So the students who are in the basic group and the below basic group, what you're hoping to see is our numbers or our trend lines going down because we want fewer kids in those categories. And that is what the numbers are showing. This is, I'm showing you ELA, this is math. It shows something similar. Just for comparison purposes, this is the advanced group, the proficient, combining the two in the middle. The middle column is specifically the economically disadvantaged kids in the red. And there's the basic and below basic. So to see how close they are to our all group and how much further away they are than the state group. Yes.
Just a good chart.
Yeah, no problem.
Based on what you said earlier, just for data, when you said it was hard to identify. So with these numbers, when you identify economically disadvantaged, those are the ones that did fill out the paperwork?
Correct.
So not to mention there's other, okay.
Yeah. Those numbers are shared with the state, they're just not shared with our staff.
Math equation on your statistics. Between 58.8 and 54.3.
Yes.
Is that statistics? I mean, are they really like statistically like even?
Very close. I mean,
Yes,
I know what you're saying.
It's a complicated formula to say whether that was,
Yes.
I suspect they're not statistically very similar.
no. But I would say a statistic significance between those scores and the state score. And this is the math. The last one I showed you was the ELA. This gives you a comparison to our neighbors. If you take a look, you'll see the little red marks. And again, you should have this in your packet, so if this chart is too hard to see. The red marks for the other school districts show you where our students were in those same years. Our trend lines are in the red and black. Their trend lines are in the colors that match their chart. And the state would be the same for any. So you can see that some of the districts, the economically disadvantaged groups are actually below the state average. So again, to see ours and to see our economically disadvantaged group intersecting with our all population is just unbelievable. I have to admit, the first time I put those numbers in and saw that chart pop up that way, I just couldn't believe it. I was hoping to see that we were mirroring, but to see it cross was just this last spring, our third grade actually outpaced our all group. Our fourth grade outpaced our all group, and the fifth grade is mirroring the all group. That particular class, this is similar to data for our math scores. That particular class, sorry, I'll get there in a second. This kind of shows you as well compared to some of the other districts. You can actually see our economically disadvantaged group outpaced some of the all students in other districts, which is impressive. So I was mentioning before, our fifth grade class was not as high as the third and fourth grade. So I dug a little deeper, and for ELA and math, you can see that for both of those, there is that growth, and you can see the economically disadvantaged line is the lower line, and it's working its way up toward intersecting. So even though it's not as impressive as the third and fourth grade scores, it still is showing the right trends. I took a look at districts across the state of Wisconsin to see who matched up with us in terms of free and reduced populations. There were about 30 school districts, elementary schools that I came up with. From those, I pulled a group that I could see had economically disadvantaged numbers, and those were either mirroring or showed some degree of closing their gaps. And of those, only Sevastopol, and then there's one other district, Wazeeka, which I had never heard of before doing this research. It's down in the western corner of the state. They had some similar looking charts. I don't know enough about them to know what it is that might be causing it, but to think that there's 400 and some school districts and multiple elementaries in many of those districts, to have us and maybe one other district that look like this is impressive. The other piece that's impressive is when you look at our charts, that's ELA and that's math, and you almost couldn't tell the difference between the two. And the reason for that is if it was curriculum, you would see either ELA or math having that kind of a trend. When it's culture, when it's other things that you're doing within the building, you're going to see it in both places. So some of the things, just to summarize, we've got some high standards here, and rather than trying to find ways to lower the bar to make sure that we're helping those economically disadvantaged kids, we're bringing those kids up to the standards that we have for everybody. Our staff is strong, supported by strong substitutes. We've done things to remove barriers, things like covering the cost of field trips for kids, working to try and understand parents and trying to find ways to end cycles, the Maslow's hierarchy that I talked about before, building culture within the building, the PBAS, coming up with some rules that are the same for everybody. Something I didn't mention was shirts. When I first came here, we had PTO, and one of the things the PTO asked was, if there's anything that we can do for you, what would you like? And I said, I would like every student in this school to have a Sevastopol t-shirt. It allows them to be a part of what's going on. We've been able to provide those every year up until this year. We see those kids wearing those shirts all the time, and it's not an identity, an identifier as, you know, I'm an economically disadvantaged kid, because everybody got one. And so it's a cool t-shirt to wear as opposed to something where it's like, well, I know why you've got that shirt. As I said before, studying, learning about the issue, doing book studies, the simulation. really went a long way from turning people from sympathetic to empathetic. The focus on reading, we did the Tundra Tales. We'll be doing another project this spring in terms of trying to get the kids to read and challenging them. Making sure that the education here is accessible, whether that's in the building or out of the building, and giving students something bigger than themselves, like the community of caring, to be a part of. So lastly, what I would ask is if you could take a moment and send an email to our teachers for the things that they're doing. I could talk to them blue in the face about all these things, but they're the ones who are the boots on the ground. They're the ones who are making sure that it happens in the classroom. You can feel it when you come in here, the number of people that I have who come in from the outside, take tours, whatever the case might be. You just feel it in here, and that's because the staff really does a good job. Questions?
Mr. Wilson, that was excellent. Not only in the result, but the amount of research you put into it.
That was by far the best report I've ever seen since I've been on school. It's a really, it's the heart of what I do. And your staff is so right. Your challenge is how to replicate this. Because as you say, you want to replace just a couple teachers around. So I think the challenge for you as the administrator person, how you put a program together to sort out in the process of applicants. That's a big challenge. Awesome.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. What's next?
A couple of things. From the presentation side of things, I'd like to take this to the elementary principals conference and share with them the things that we're doing. Partly just, I'm excited about it, but the other piece is I think it's a chance for me to share what our staff is doing. I tell people all the time how impressed I am about this place, and that's really what it boils down to. The second piece then is seeing if there's some other subgroups that we might be able to do something similar with. I think it will be a little bit more challenging than this one was, but I think that will be a good next step.
Did you consider a proposal for next year's WA
School board convention. He will.
The boss is.
That's settled. Thank you. No, I think that would be great if you did that.
I think another thing to think of, and use your faculty, teachers brainstorm with you. How do you get this information into our community so they know it and celebrate it with you and are proud of what's going on? I mean, that's, you don't have to let the whole, you can't shove them all upon you want to. And I think the big group is, how do you get this information to the people out here in Sevastopol and the Jackson Fort and all that? Which assures them that when they put X on those, this is strictly political. For a lot of reasons, but one of them is strictly political. But when they put that X in the box, they're getting value for that X. And this is awesome.
You mentioned the summer bridge work books that we did up to 23, and did do 24, because it was fast.
Correct. Yep.
Did those serve their purpose, or would those be beneficial or beneficial in the future going forward if funds could be found or something like that?
I think there's benefit in it. It's really hit and miss in terms of which students chose to do it and which ones didn't. It was really nice to be able to hand that out and know that the kids had it in their hands. But in terms of the families that chose to do the whole workbook and really hold it to fidelity, maybe half of the kids. So there's going to be a benefit because it's going to help some kids do something well, but it's just there's nothing concrete tied to it, so it's not like the kid has to do it.
I agree with Jerry. How do you translate this to?
Well, one of the things that I need to turn an article in for the upcoming newsletter for the district, and that was one of the ways that it's associated.
I think just maintain what the group is doing, because as those kids and those families recognize their kids are doing better, that message is going to get out to the community. And And I think that CTE, elective teacher, teaming, you were talking about teaming, I think the elementary shows, there's always, you have good teaming at the elementary level. That needs to grow. I think more teachers, I think old school teachers, they did their classroom and that was it. And then your elementary group, so but the teachers themselves, my perception is they seem to team pretty well where needed. So that CTE, I think, is related to that.
Absolutely. They're not afraid to talk to each other when they've got questions about different things, but there's a level of trust that, even if you are doing something in your classroom, that you are making an impact with those kids. And I can guarantee you that when those kids come to my room, that they'll be there.
The real challenge for you, though, is not to maintain and move the dial to the next level. A lot of it's very difficult. You're
It's
doing
harder to
great.
go from
Yes,
grade
it
to
is.
It would
greatest.
be great. A lot of effort, a lot of time, but if you try to maintain the move backwards, you got to keep the engines going.
That's good.
Great job.
And the athletic directors have their reports. We have those. Anything from the superintendent?
Thank you. I want to start out with a congratulations to Mr. Paul and the students for receiving a new welder and helmet. They received the grant from the Spark Young Minds Grant Program by the Mississippi Welders Company, and we received that on January 7th. So a huge shout out for that program and the opportunity for our students to get hands-on experience in a high-demand field. And secondly, congratulations, excuse me, to a senior. I'm going to do the best with her name, Isabella. Everybody knows her by Bella. Dara Skevich Hadawani. I apologize for probably killing that name. Did the best I could. Was selected as one of 2 from the state of Wisconsin by Superintendent Jill Underly to represent Wisconsin in Washington, D.C. in March. Along with the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and meet representatives and senators and understand how that whole system works, she received a $10,000 scholarship to support her in her post-secondary work. So a huge congratulations to Bella and for all the work that she's done and her passion in understanding government. And kudos, Aaron, the report was phenomenal. It's a conversation that he and I started in July on the way to the radio station, and we were talking about our data and what we were doing. And the challenge was to understand the why. Why are we doing as well as we are? And Aaron dug into that and connecting the research and understanding teacher efficacy and the impact that that has on it, and being able to scale that now into the middle school and the high school with some of the work that we're doing. And one of the pieces, if you look at the graphs, that when Aaron came in 2017, if you look prior to that historical data, you will see actually that the performance was going down in the economically disadvantaged population. So really shifting that work with staff development and building that team, building that collaboration really shows off into that academic achievement. So huge thank you for the work that you have done historically in creating an amazing environment. In my short tenure, I continue to be amazed at how people work together, they pick up things and they just move it. So thank you for all of that. And next month, Mr. Schaefer will be on deck with our middle school and high school, so he will be sharing some data at that time.
I don't really have anything else for you, something they want to bring forward. It's not on the agenda, just for information. Otherwise, we move to the budget report.
Okay. As far as the budget report that is included in your packet, our revenues continue to remain on track for this year. Interest earnings are down a little bit. Obviously, that's due to lower cash balances. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Our expenditures are a little behind this time last year, which is a good thing. There were a couple of large tech payments made earlier in the year last year, though, so that's kind of clouding the numbers a little bit. So we're pretty close to on track, if a little under where we were last year, and that's okay. All of the expenditure categories are tracking as expected, and things look to be on track. We received most of our tax payments for the January settlement so far, so we're doing all right.
Great.
I would just say I asked Tasha if she would share some information about the community fund that we get from the state, which is up this year according to what I've read online, and Tasha verified that we are getting more money. Do you have those figures handy, Tasha?
I do. So this year, we are getting $53,774 for our common school funds or library aid. That's up $6,625 from last year. So a good increase going towards our library, our school libraries.
Nice to see an increase.
Anything for facilities?
Not, we have it as agenda items.
Okay. We don't have any old business. Anything that we need to be worded to legislatively right now, Sue?
Yes, lots going on legislatively, actually. CASBA, which is a National Association of School Boards group of about 25 states, along with several other educational organizations, have filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Supreme Court regarding the E-rate case. As you recall, I had mentioned earlier that the Fifth Circuit deemed that the Universal Service Fund was unconstitutional, and this is the national fund that funds our E-rate. So it's good to see that a lot of organizations on the national level are now coming forward and filing that brief with the U.S. Supreme Court. So hopefully we can maintain the E-rate funding, which we now get. Then Governor Evers now is creating a new statewide office aimed at curbing gun violence, and this was done in the wake of the school shooting in a school near the Madison area. And $10 million in funding will be available for grants to local districts and other organizations in the state.
It didn't meet with the assembly.
No, it did not. But yes, they're okay. I think I mentioned that Representative Kitchens is once again the chair of the Education Committee. And Representative Morceau is also on the Education Committee, and he has been very supportive of minimum aid to districts like ours that do not receive equalization aid. Also, Governor Evers has weighed in on the change in the state test scores, and Aaron referred to those test scores in his presentation. And Governor Evers said it was a mistake for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction to change how school children are measured on state academic tests without gathering input from educators and parents. And at the last meeting, we talked about these test scores and the changes that were made by the DPI and how those scores were altered for this year. So it's interesting now that Governor Evers has weighed in. He said in an article, I hate to even talk about things that aren't my purview anymore, but I just think there should have been some information and dialogue happening with all sorts of people before that decision. It's hard to compare year to year if one year you're doing something completely different. I think it could have been handled better. The mistake was there wasn't enough conversation with stakeholders. And Assembly Speaker Robin Voss weighed in on that, saying that the new testing standards were preposterous and expects to introduce legislation to address the changes during the upcoming legislative session. So I'm sure we will be hearing much more about that.
Is the education department reported?
Um,
Does it meet,
Well,
is it meet over that
yes.
organization?
Yes and no, not on everything. He did not include this change.
They do that on their own.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm not that you would know this, but, so $10 million to help gun violence. Did they talk about what like that might be? Like mental health support? I mean, how do we start putting in grants for that?
The $10 million,
I mean, how schools should start applying for
it
that?
would be for schools, for some, but also law enforcement
Oh.
and other.
Well, that's across the state.
Other community, yes. And we have another student, former student, who is in the political bureau. Elena Rabach is the new intern in Representative Kitchen's office. She is currently a UW-Madison student, and she hopes to go to law school. And Representative Kitchen specifically mentioned that she was a Sevastopol graduate, so that is nice.
Great work, thank you.
The governor will be giving his state of the state message on January 22nd, and his 25-27 budget address on February 18th. The DPI has awarded $10.5 million, has been awarded a $10.5 million grant to bolster special education and leadership retention. Throughout the state, we have quite an exodus of people in special education, teachers in special education who are leaving. And this money is designed to address the critical staffing shortages. We've not experienced that so much here, but it is happening around the state. And this federal funding that has come to DPI will help the districts increase professional growth opportunities, implement innovative retention strategies, and ensure that every Wisconsin student has access to a high-quality educator. I think the important thing here is to provide support for those special educators because they do have very challenging work in their daily school lives, and they need that kind of support if we're going to retain them. And I know CISA is doing a lot in that area to provide specialized training as well as support for educators in special education. And then finally, I just want to mention, I hope everyone had a chance to read the article that Randy sent out by Ann Chapman on school referendums are sending a clear message, will Wisconsin lawmakers hear it. I think this is really, really critical. There are a lot of organizations in the state that are getting behind this whole referendum issue. I read something the other day. We don't have a budget surplus. We have plenty of money there for schools. Let's use it where it's needed. Let's not talk about just having a surplus. Let's use it to support our schools. So lots going on in this area, and there will continue to be, especially with the state budget efforts. So a lot of this will be discussed at convention, and I know Randy's going to convention. Lisa, are you going? No. Anyone else going? Okay. Well, we'll bring back everything we can.
Question, is this thing with changing the scores? Did that ever come through your organization for discussion? I mean, I can't believe.
No, I'm not the WASB board, no.
Should they make a little fit over that they were not involved in
Well,
that?
see, this is what the governor is saying.
Right. You guys should jump on the, never kick a man to the down. So you might as well, you should jump on as an association and say, you guys, I think you should have input into it too. Like that's just, I can't believe any organization can just want to change the goals and will always meet them, or we don't like change the rules. That's just horrible. I mean, I think the school board association should really something that's sense is that was done without ever any input. That would really pull them over the coals, especially if you got the
It seems
governor.
interesting that
Yes.
They probably,
Beavers went against Utter, but I mean, so he used to be the DPI. So for him to make that statement,
Right.
or just.
I'm saying that since he's all upset, they might as well jump on too.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's upset with what she's done, that's, to me, very significant.
I'm sure they will
the lobbyists, the organizations, the lobbyists are gonna get more attention than the governor because people that change it, they don't care what the governor thinks. So it's the little people that have to speak up and say, this is not right. It's the people that are in the trenches, the schools that have to speak up and say, this is not right.
See, that really, what that really does, all that, what we just saw, they just kind of like gave you the finger. Like, we don't care.
Well, hey, that's why I think rigging is so important.
Yeah.
The schools can succeed in this way. It's
Yeah.
hard, everyone
You don't
has to do
change
it.
the game.
It's a cultural thing. You've been saying this forever.
Yeah.
Culture eats strategy for lunch.
That's right.
Well, here's an
Remember
area where
that.
culture's doing well.
Right.
So thank you again, but I
Okay.
mean, sorry.
Good, we'll move on. We are going to approve the high school boys and high school girls wrestling co-ops with Sturgeon Bay. So I'll take a motion on those.
I so move that we approve the cooperation of boys and girls wrestling with Sturgeon.
We can roll those together. Okay. Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. And then we have a first reading of some policies that, for people listening, the policy committee did receive, review with the superintendent and our policy attorney group. So I will look for a motion to approve the first reading of those.
I will move to approve the first reading of the policies as listed.
Second? Second by Warren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then we have building HVAC calendars for section 91 is the 91 building. Okay.
So the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting convened in December. We've had some significant roof leaks in sections 19 and 4. And when we look at our long-range plans, that roof section, it was supposed to be replaced last year due to budget needs. We needed to push it off a year. And so we've got a bid on that along with the HVAC replacement. It's also in our long-range facility plan to be replaced, and that's the 91 section. Buildings and Grounds Committee had significant conversation around it and supported the moving forward with the bids, asking that you would, because the bids can always change so that we don't have to bring them back, if they would exceed, not to exceed 15% of the proposed amount, that just gives us the flexibility if a product comes in a little bit higher, because we won't be doing this work until July, because we're going into the 25-26 budget.
Is there any opportunity to get an additional bid on
Sure.
that HVAC?
We can.
Yeah, I provided you with some information from a company that, way back, Performance Services, when we did performance contract work here, they actually were competitive in that bid. I was contacted by one of their people. They'd be very much interested in coming up here. Actually, the head engineer is Columbus this Sevastopol. So he would be very much interested in coming up and looking at it. And he has experience. He worked for Johnson Controls for 15 years. So he may already know some of our systems. So, when Dan gets back in shape again, if we could, contact those people to get an additional bid.
Sure. I had asked him if he had reached for 2 bids. He had asked for multiple bids on the roof. We only received the one. On the HVAC, he just went with the current provider of our HVAC system, but he said he would go out for bids and reach out to them when he gets
So
back.
I guess all they needed was just for Dan to contact the person that I provided for him.
Yep.
Okay.
And what we're approving here is the budget approval to move forward.
Yeah.
And that they'll have the flexibility to look at bids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There's no other discussion. discussion, look for a motion on the first item.
Move to approve the building HVAC and air handlers for section 91.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then we'll look for a motion on the second item, roof surfaces.
I make a motion to approve for roof surface areas 4 and 19.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then there are the school board resolutions that the committee takes out down at the school board convention. And does anyone want to, we have, if there's something here somebody wants to address specifically on any of the resolutions, we address it. Otherwise, we take a motion to have the delegate who is Sue vote in the best interest of Sevastopol.
I would appreciate hearing from anyone who might have some strong feelings, one way or the other, about any of these 12 resolutions, as far as how we would like them to vote.
Has the licensing, has that been an issue before?
It has, yes. And the reason it keeps coming back is because of the shortage of staff. And I know there is some concern. Some people are feeling, well, we don't want to loosen this up too much. We want to keep high standards. And others are saying we can't get staff, so we have loosened it out. So there's kind of division on thinking on that.
If there aren't any questions or comments, is there a motion?
Move to approve the WASB school board resolutions as presented.
The motion would direct the delegate to vote
Vote our delegate to support the resolutions as
in the best interest of
presented.
Sevastopol.
Best interest of Sevastopol.
If that's what you want to say.
Exactly what I want to say.
That's what I was putting words in your mouth.
Sometimes you have to prod.
The whole.
Yeah, that's how we're doing, just telling you to go vote. What you
Okay.
think is best.
All
Because
right.
as you get into the discussions, maybe you'll say, oh. I
Well,
like
there
that.
will be amendments to the amendments to the
Okay.
amendments. I can tell you that right now.
Was there a second to that?
Yeah, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then we have a request for a stipend for the robotics coach.
Mr. Phillips presented a proposal for a stipend for the robotics coach last spring. I'm bringing it to the board at this time. A little history about robotics. It has been in Sevastopol for the last 6 years. We have had over 150 students participate in this from both middle school and high school. We currently have 20 students in the club right now, actively attending our middle school students, but of course we're competing with all of the other things that we do also. We have DI and we have winter sports, but he meets with the club 2 times a week after school until 5 o'clock. For 3 days a week, he'll move it to 3 days a week in February. And based off of the information that he shared, he puts in a lot of time for this. It's a great opportunity for our students. As we all know, this is the direction in which our future is going to be. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to continue to support. This has been in a position that has not received a stipend for the last 6 years. So I'd like to see us move forward with robotic stipend in the caveat that we also, as we talked about as a district, our stipends and our contracts, our extracurricular contracts will all get reviewed moving forward into the spring and may fold into next year, but our goal is to be able to get that completed by spring.
I would move to approve the proposed stipend for the robotics fund.
Second.
Question or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then we move to the change for the employee handbook on personal leave.
So one of the things that Sevastopol is working on how to be able to honor our staff and the requests that they need, and also ensure that we have our highly qualified staff in front of our students as best as possible. So as an administrative team, we started to have conversations about what were some of the things that we could do to help honor our staff, also ensure that we keep our highly qualified staff in mind, and also giving some flexibility for our staff as we move forward. So I presented to you in board memo a week ago the draft piece. The draft is in front of you in your board packet today. And I want to be very clear that what we're talking about is I would like to see us move forward with implementation of practice immediately, but we wouldn't move forward if you approve this with the additional day until the 25-26 school year. So I just want to be very clear that the proposal for the additional day would start in the 25-26 school year. So just to highlight a couple of pieces that are sitting inside of the policy, the changes that we've made. Currently, the district has given 2 personal days with no ability to be able to carry those personal days over. As an administrative team, what we would like to do is we would like to keep the 2 personal days with the ability to carry 1 day over. And then once you receive 10 years of service, you would go to 3 personal days, and you would be able to carry 1 personal day over, so that any point in time you could have it up to 4 personal days within a calendar year. So that's a big change, trying to honor our staff with a very minimal additional expense for our district. Then the second piece of it is maintaining the current limitations to using personal days, because we want to have our best in front of our staff at the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year, before and after breaks. It's really important that we have all of our staff in to be able to meet our needs. That being said, if you have an exception, right now it's been an unwritten rule of a once-in-a-lifetime exception. What we're proposing as an administrative team is that every 3 years there could be an exception. That exception would go through the same process. Spring break, my family has given me a trip to a foreign country, and everybody's going over spring break, and I want to extend my personal leave. I have the days to extend my personal leave around spring break. That would go to the building administrator. They would look at it. They would ensure that they're able to have sub-coverage. It would qualify within that once in a 3-year exception piece. Administrator would approve it. We would be done. The other piece is, and the one that we have conversation around, is the unpaid personal leave. So if you look down at the handbook, this is where it's a little bit more specific. So in the rare cases that you're going to an unpaid personal leave piece, there's some additional parameters that we're putting into place. First and foremost, salaried employees that are seeking unpaid days. So you have 2 personal days right now, you want to take 4 personal days. Those 2 days would be unpaid, and your salary would be docked accordingly. If you are a salaried employee, you just would not get paid for those 2 days, right? So hourly employee. So unpaid, whether you're salaried or hourly, either hourly you just don't get it, salary we would actually have to deduct your pay. Second component of that, if it's an unpaid day, they need to secure their sub, and they would need to pay for their sub when they were out of the building, because that's not something we had budgeted for. This is an unpaid day moving forward. So really tightening up kind of the practice, empowering administrators to make the decision based off of their building, their staffing, and their needs. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, when the decision's made, it stops with the administrative team. Did I miss anything?
I think it looks very clean. And, past practices of coming to a school board every time, you know, it's just too messy. Really hard to deal with. And this, I think, really spells it out very explicitly, what the rules, you know, what policies would be.
Well, and it should be up to the administrative staff. They're the ones that are running the building.
Right.
And you know best what the needs are for our kids. So we don't know that. And you have a better idea of that.
Plus, you know, for teachers, I mean, for staff that, you know, have been here for a while, I mean, it's a small reward, but it's some recognition, you know, you recognize your years of service, so we'll do
Retention incentive.
You want language, these type of policies. Try to figure a way to move it. I mean, this is the perfect policy. It's not really, give me a line at the end that says the final interpretation of this policy will always be best for this solution.
I think that's in
I have that in there.
Yes,
I don't have it repeatedly in there, but I do have it. It is in there once.
Yeah. Ends with the superintendent.
The superintendent decision is final.
Yeah.
I did look at other districts around on the peninsula, and everybody does things a little bit differently. And this is trying to kind of balance everything across the other districts.
I know Gene Bourne from Neola did say that same thing, that districts around the area all do something different. There was nothing that she could provide us that was consistent, so I think that's very true.
Is there a motion on the?
I would move to approve the handbook changes for personal leave as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. Are there further questions or discussion? There are none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And we have the annual open enrollment caps for the 25-26 school year. So in your board packet, you will see the proposed caps for open enrollment. As historically, our special education program is full. At the elementary level and middle school and high school level, we made some minor adjustments to our capacity in order to hopefully allow us to it will allow us to maintain small class sizes, but also this winter and early fall, we had to decline a couple of families because our grade levels were full. So when we think about our budgets, we think about our constraints, giving us a little bit of flexibility instead of being full at those primary grades. Hopefully we'll be able to take those families in the future. So I adjusted third grade from 40 to 44 in conversation with Mr. Hiltz, and fourth and fifth grade from 40 to 46. So that puts class sizes at 23 at fourth and fifth grade, and class sizes at 22 at third grade. And then at the secondary level, we adjusted at the high school 9, 10, 11, 12 in conversation with Mr. Schaefer from 60 to 65. And as you can see, we really needed that only at 9th and 10th grade. Are there further questions, or is there a motion on the enrollment caps?
Just my only additional comment, kind of for the last two, is it's good we are focusing and deep diving into our data and our culture and our budgets, because I think it's important as we make these changes. You know, so my history is, especially in government before schools, is you make a change and it's never be revisited again. Like if our culture starts to change, our numbers start going down, our budgets start to struggle, let's not forget these changes. They can be revoked. I'm just saying that, keep that in mind, and hopefully things stay on the up and we keep driving away and everything's awesome, but there's consequences to all these decisions, and I just felt the need to put that out on in the air for people to hear. So
I would would move to approve the open enrollment caps for the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. As I said, we do not have any closed session business tonight. Policy committee will meet on January 17th. Building and Ground will meet on January 29th. Our next regular school board meeting is February 19th. I perhaps should have mentioned during the president's report that all of the, I talked to WASB today, all of the superintendent evaluations have been submitted, but one. So you know who you are. Get that document in, because we're going to be discussing it with the superintendent next month. Notice I put my face down and I didn't look at anybody. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.